Spring and any remnant of snow is melting away and warmer days are ahead. Let's set up our loungers, grip a tropical drink, and stay inside and recount media from spring. You guessed it, it's time to appreciate the little things. It wasn't going to be hard to convince me to buy a Switch port of Super Mario 3D World, one of my favorite platformer experiences of all time. A charming and addicting adventure with some of my favorite power-ups and flourishes of any Mario game, all tied together by an all-time phenomenal soundtrack and some hypnotic visuals. But as if reliving a gaming experience I hold so dear wasn't enough, the newly added campaign Bowser's Fury really sealed the deal, shaking the world upon the reveal of the terrifying Fury Bowser, who makes for an excellent atmospheric set piece, awakening periodically to interrupt the game's enthralling collectathon in favor of a full-blown kaiju battle. Risking crucifixion, I can sometimes find collectible-focused 3D platformers a bit tedious, but Bowser's Fury has a serious strength in how it leaves reward just shortly enough out of reach to keep me at it. The strengths of 3D World and Odyssey blend beautifully in a Mario experience I will remember long past March 31st. It's a real shame I've based so much of my personality around thinking Marvel stuff is samey and annoying, because WandaVision is neither of those things, largely an atmospheric departure from the norm of the MCU through Wanda's damaged psyche and fixation with various flavors of sitcom. The real charm lying in how acutely the framing of WandaVision lampoons different eras of TV comedy, from the eerie black and white 50s to the single camera radical era of the aughts, and how it uses that inherent eccentricity to build a fascinating mystery, from highly selective autonomy of everyone involved, to Wanda bending the fabric of her show at will to trap everyone and herself deeper in the charade. The show has caught some heat for falling into the same old Marvel stuff as it progresses, and I think that's hard to dispute. But the opening episodes in particular are an experience I really cherish, and I think the development bestowed to Wanda, as well as the series' various charismatic performances, are well worth the price of admission. I've had my ticket to board the Mugen Train since the Demon Slayer anime adaptation closed on that chilling cliffhanger a year and a half ago. The destination of this ride is a breathtakingly animated adventure that promptly reminded me why I love these characters and how stunning the world of Demon Slayer is. Enbu acts as possibly the most horrifying demon Tanjiro and friends have encountered, his conceit best described as Shonen Freddy Krueger, creating a struggle within the psyche of our heroes which allows the narrative to stretch muscles in areas of heart warmth, humor, and sheer despair, in a way only Demon Slayer could balance so masterfully. With every edge of my seat battle, regretful tear shed, and phenomenal character design I was treated to at each stop of this trip, Mugen Train has exhausted my arsenal of train puns, and that takes a lot. Jokes aside, this is probably my favorite movie I've watched this year. Ladies and gentlemen, I've acquired a PS5. Thank you, I know, it's a big deal, we've worked so hard for this. I had to make my console starter special, and what better than the PlayStation's own quasi-mascot platformer, Sackboy: A Huge Adventure. The creative and loving flares associated with Little Big Planet lend themselves to some inquisitive level design and atmosphere that's hard not to be endeared by. Though this game has the accessible gameplay and fun bad guys found in a lot of its peers of the genre, I think its crowning gem is not only its music, but how it uses it, syncing familiar songs like Uptown Funk and Material Girl directly to the layout of a level, timing with your actions when moving at its best, and making you feel like you're seamlessly playing out a full-blown animated musical number with just your intuitive input. Many will bristle at the licensed music, but the way it uses the familiarity of these songs to guide the player into perfectly synchronized sequences of adventure gameplay fully justifies the matter, and even if that doesn't sell you, you have to admit the techno cover of Sinatra's Fly Me to the Moon from this game that's played over this segment is pretty killer. You may not know that you have industry genius Craig McCracken to thank for your childhood, and considering his career spans across Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and Wander Over Yonder, I feel pretty safe making that statement regardless of which generation you belong to. This is clearly a man whose talent has encroached entire eras of animation, which is why it's so impressive that his latest project, Kid Cosmic, still feels as fresh as can be, balancing humor, action, and engaging lore with McCracken's penchant for idiosyncratic and charming character designs. Despite having some recognizable hallmarks of McCracken's prior works, Kid Cosmic's comic book-esque style and daring tonal shifts make it stand out among his pedigree, leaving me laughing just as soon as I was at the edge of my seat in disbelief of some of the things you can get away with on TVY7 nowadays. And considering the cliffhanger the show leaves us on, it has potential to outshine its predecessors of Craig's pedigree, which, considering my sheer praise for those shows, says a ton. Promising Young Woman's limelight lap along the Oscar nomination round table, despite no full victories, brings a great deal of truth to the key word of its title, and it follows on that promise with strong subversive directing and writing that made for one of the most thrilling movies I've watched this year. Promising Young Woman co-ops familiar performers and tropes and turns them completely on their head, giving full credit to the audience to be equal part accountable to connect those dots and baffled by them, framing all of these elements with a downright haunting reality, and in turn weaving a universe that thrives on its own ambiguity as the main protagonist, medical student turned vengeance seeker Cassie, operates on a sliding scale of morality that I think is as malleable to her as it is to the audience. I'd look up a trigger warning list before you dive into this one because it is very heavy, but if you're all clear, I'd heartily recommend it. It's a thought-provoking and daring movie that is utterly unapologetic in how confusing and yet earnest it is all at once. In my last Little Things video, I gave an oath to One Piece in celebration of its 1000th chapter, but it took quite a bit of catching up to get to a spot where I could speak to that, to tell you the truth. And it was nice to see what Shonen Jump and its neighbors have been up to since starting that journey. One of these new darlings is Kaiju number 8, an interesting take on the giant monster genre, where a man whose job is to literally clean up after the fallout of Kaiju Cataclysm becomes a kaiju himself, a story that applies shonen trappings executed to perfection and doing so within kaiju conventions, which is a brilliant combination I'm surprised we don't see more of. Attack on Titan is more of a seinen, and the art is downright stunning at its best. I've also been enjoying Sakamoto Days, story of the world's greatest assassin settling down with a wife and child and just being a great dad. This is a manga that balances humor and action effortlessly, dodging between blocking bullets with a cough drop and intense edge battles where innocent lives are on the line. The standoffish but kind Sakamoto shot straight up to stand among my favorite shonen protagonists, making fellow mercenaries look like amateurs one minute and taking his family to the amusement park the next. If this is where shonen manga is headed, we've got bright days ahead. Nothing helps me unwind quite like circling the wagons and booting up them's fighting herds, a 2D fighter that started life as a My Little Pony fan game before legal reasons necessitated the alteration of the characters within, and for the better in my humble opinion, as Fightin' Herd's phenomenal cast of characters is able to pick up speed from their clear inspiration but stand out as truly memorable thanks to the diversions they were forced to take. It should also be noted that MLP's own Lauren Faust reached out to help breathe new life into the cast of Fightin' Herds rather than just leave them high and dry, making everyone feel all the more authentic. The paltry size of the game's cast has been a frequent target for criticism, but all 7 characters feel so distinct and fleshed out in terms of gameplay mechanics and personality that I've never found myself wishing for more. The game has been out for a while, but the recent resurgence brought out by the DLC fighter Shanty got me to dive in fully, and I've been addicted ever since, as picking each character feels like taking on a totally new challenge, exactly as a great fighting game should. Give it a try, so I can wipe the floor with you all playing as my main, Velvet. You bared with me on Shonen Freddy Krueger before, and now I need you to stick around for Shonen Crypt Keeper, okay? The charm of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is begotten in no small part by its haunting strangeness, feeling at times like shonen action through the lens of the more disturbing end of urban legends. A muscle that can be fully flexed in the anime adaptation of the JoJo side story, Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe, which finally enjoyed its first Western release this spring. The titular character leaps from his role as one of the pivotal personalities of JoJo Part 4 to the framing host of his own horror anthology series. And considering how twisted Rohan really is, despite his poise and personal standards, a piece where he tells you the strange notions and tall tales that inspire his own writing is a truly perfect recipe. Rohan tells the sweat-inducing tales of godlike exercise and challenges of good manners with lives on the line. Though out of the lot of them, I'll be retelling At a Confessional at spooky campfires for years to come, which is a testament to how accessible and broad the appeal of this OVA is, despite all pretense otherwise considering the pedigree of JoJo as a series. You don't need to understand Stans or Dio to follow these new favorite macabre stories of mine. I've discussed here and there the rise of anxiety core movies, as I like to call them, and I've perhaps never seen an instance so grounded and by extension, palpably terrifying than Shiva Baby. You may recognize the lead actress, Rachel Sennett, from her occasional viral slam dunks writing sketches, or her hilariously sardonic stand-up, and Shiva Baby sees her playing a college dropout who encounters an ex-girlfriend and former sugar daddy at a funeral filled with her family ignorant of her proclivities. And if that description doesn't make you break out the circular chest-breathing gifs, I don't know what will. The movie is directed excellently, evoking laughter one moment before launching into spine-tingling, out-of-body nervosis that flawlessly puts you in the character's shoes, for better or worse. If you want to see something distinct, down-to-earth, and yet unbelievably shaking to one's core, from a new-coming star and director with beautiful careers ahead of them, look no further. Among the PlayStation's hot summer lineup is Oddworld Soulstorm, a long-awaited follow-up to the Oddworld games, which I've always admired for their haunting, Burton-esque aesthetics and insanely creative worlds and mechanics. There's just never been anything quite like Oddworld, and the same could be said about Soulstorm, and where it stands among its peers on the market at the moment. Soulstorm asks a lot of you as a player, but rewards just as much through the sheer satisfaction packaged with mastering the game's challenging puzzles and mechanics. The atmosphere and painstakingly detailed environments do an amazing job making you feel like you're at the bottom of a food chain, which in turn makes you feel all the more intelligent and badass as you use every new tool you're introduced to in bids to dodge and destroy enemies and free fellow Madokans. The bread and butter of Oddworld is its cerebral, fast-paced gameplay that this installment has down masterfully, and the freedom involved in the gameplay helps the vast and fascinating mythos of Oddworld feel all the more tangible. This isn't just some tin-canned factory-made cash grab, it's perhaps the most robust game I've played this year so far. I don't think I love anything as much as comedian and actor Griffin Newman loves movies, and it's that passion that can be felt in every second of his conversations with movie critic David Sims on the podcast Blank Check, a conversation series devoted to exploring the strangest and most impressive careers in Hollywood. This past year in particular has been enriching to listen to. Their conversations on Robert Zemeckis revitalizing my love for Roger Rabbit and the Back to the Future movies, and their coverage of Musker and Clement's thumbprint on Disney acting as an excellent binge to go with some of my longer, busier days, bringing light to not just movies I'm nostalgic for, but why they leave such an impact on us and the small details you just don't always think about. There's an unbridled enthusiasm and observant eye for trends and detail that Griffin and David bring to every conversation that's hard not to feel rubbed off on yourself. And that glee to share not just reserved for movies, but equally distributed for guest spots and tangents about arcades and grocery stores, all the way up to Griffin's endearing care taken to preserve the professionalism and occasional fiction of his podcast through his tireless editing and improv. This is an easy one to lose lots and lots of hours to. Finally, second to my PS5 in anticipation, I got fully vaccinated from the deadly virus, and I finally went back to the movies, and I don't think I could have picked a better movie to return to theaters with. Godzilla vs. Kong is the popcorn muncher it sells itself as, and I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was refreshing to see how the hype for this movie plunged us all back into kaiju mania, and this film thrives in that reputation, homaging its roots in a lot of brilliant ways, while still standing as its own titanic installment. This movie was everything I wanted in three of my favorite movie monsters. Yes, I said three, I say no more. Going head to head, and I got my money's worth on the big screen that I really think it was best intended for if you're able to do so safely. There are just some insane moves here. It's hard to choreograph giant monsters, but there's a certain brutality and use of all personality available from characters like Godzilla and Kong that make this clash so memorable. I asked for Monk vs. Lizard, and I got it. That's a 5-star from Yelp on me. Thank you all so much for watching. It's another Little Things and a new quote unquote season of Striker Stars ahead. Who knows what cool stuff it'll behold. Tune in for those. I've got some neat ideas, and I hope you all stick around to see them. Until then, have a great day.